Today, joining the guild, we have Pam, who is the co-founder and CEO of Subject7, and Joe, who is the chief revenue officer of Subject7. PM has over 20 years of experience actually in software development and processing automation across different industries, spanning both federal and commercial sectors. And during his career, he's been recognized as one of the main challenges of test automation he's seen as the mismatch between technical experience of testing teams and the complex test solutions and that exist in the market. And I've seen this myself as well. And it's a really hard barrier to get over sometimes. So that's why he co-founded Subject7 with the intent of developing a real comprehensive test automation solution that really will empower businesses and non-technical users to deliver what I think is really sophisticated and scalable automation without the need for a lot of programming experience or any programming experience at all. And at Subject7, he's focused on ensuring the success of early customers and really help evangelizing the benefits of codeless technologies for the test automation industry. I know we've been talking a lot about codeless automation, but Subject7 has been doing this for a while. So I think they really have perfected codeless with their particular tech stack. We also have Joe joining us, and Joe is the CRO at Subject7. He helps leads the client engagement and strategy. So he helps customers transform their QA practices, help them overcome automation testing challenges, and really helps them to maximize the return on investment. Leveraging over 2 decades of leadership and consulting experience, Joe also heads the entire portfolio at Subject7, the go-to market and sales strategy, delivering the global perspective to companies' revenue operations. And really in this capacity, he really is able to oversee technology and business partnerships that enable Subject7 to deliver solutions geared towards customers' needs and challenges. So Joe really has a high-level overview, what customers are asking for, what they're looking for. So really 2 great perspectives here today that I think you're going to really enjoy. So okay, Pam and Joe, before we get into it, let's go live. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to the Guild webinar series. Hey Pam, hopefully you can hear me. Hey Joe.
Hey Joe, sorry about that. Thanks for hosting us, and thanks for the great intro and agreeing to feature us here today. We're very excited to be presenting to the Guild. And thanks to everybody who's joining us this morning. And I realize we've probably got folks where it's morning time in the US and maybe afternoon or evening, perhaps in Europe and Asia Pac. So we're pleased to be meeting with you all today to talk about the latest trends in software testing. As Joe already mentioned, I'm also Joe, CRO at Subject7, and I'm joined by my good friend and colleague, Payam, who's one of the co-founders. So just to recap, our discussion today is going to be about how unified test automation is helping to reshape testing. And our agenda is going to be an overview of some of the trends that we're seeing in the market, how Subject7 is reacting to, and in some cases, leading those trends. And then we'll show you a preview of what we mean by unified test automation. So let me do this. I'm sorry, I'm just going to make sure my PowerPoint is cooperating here. There we go. I'm just going to get us started with a kind of a quick overview slide and then share a little bit of a personal story. So there's no surprise that in advancements in the way that we develop over the past 10 years have kind of reshaped everything, right? I mean, this has been a space that's been in a steady state of rapid change and acceleration. And the transformation of development from waterfall methods to Agile and DevOps has kind of redefined the pace of development, as well as our ability to control releases and the tooling that allows us all to collaborate. If I reflect back on a time about 20 years ago in my own career, I worked for a software company, and I was not a developer and I was not a tester, but I did have some purview and some remit about what we were doing. And back then, we would have product managers that would build our requirements. Our developers might take 9 to 12 months to build out those features, and then the testers would have 3 months or so to sort of test the features. They'd lob all kinds of defects back over the fence, which the developers would then, take another month or 2 to resolve. And then finally, and I think I'm being a little generous here, 15 to 18 months later, we would actually release code to production. And the world today couldn't be any more different, right? I mean, dev teams are pushing new code out on a monthly, weekly, and in some cases daily and even more frequent basis. So the challenge of all of this, of course, is that none of this reduced the testing burden. In fact, teams still needed to test everything when new code is being introduced, but it all had to happen in a matter of days, but rather than months. And so that's why we've seen the major shift towards automation. Um, Chaim, since you've lived on the front lines of this, I wonder if you can share a little bit of what you've seen based on your own experience.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. So mainly that the problem with waterfall methodology, which sort of pushed industry to go with agile, was that because of the extremely long feedback loop, as the release got started and as the BAs were putting the requirements together, design team was designing, coders were coding, and all, it would be in an additional 15 to 18 months until the software was in production for the real stakeholders being the end users to be able to provide the necessary feedback that is needed to be able to fine tune the system. So if there was something wrong with capturing the requirements of the software, it would take extremely long time to get to a point that could get real feedback to be able to um, incorporate that into the software. So as a result of that, the shift to agile, one main thing that it basically provided to the industry was getting early and constant feedback throughout the life cycle, making the releases much, much shorter so that if there was anything wrong with capturing the requirements or interpreting the requirements to software, it could have been caught much, much earlier throughout the process, which would in turn cause fixing it much, much faster and sooner.
Yeah. Thanks, Chaim. That's great. And just before we go on, and I want to do a quick poll. And Joe, I wonder if I can trouble you to maybe kick off the first poll. We'd like to learn a little bit more about who's joining us for this webinar today. So, Joe, if you don't mind just kicking off that poll real quick. And we'd love to see who our audience is and what sort of testing and what sort of methods of testing you guys have been using.
Absolutely. And everyone, to get to that poll, all you need to do is click on that Q&A tab. And under the Q&A tab, you'll see an option for a poll. It should be right there. Just select the option, submit, and we'll get the results in like a minute. So get your questions in
Perfect.
now. I should have some theme music here for Joe as we wait.
I'm just glad I'm not competing with the dancing robots there, Joe. That's a tough act to follow.
All right, everyone, to get your question, to answer the poll, once again, all you need to do is click on Q&A, and the poll should be right there available for you. So really quick and easy. Really would love you to participate. We have a few folks already participating. Interesting, right? It's going up and down. So Joe, let me know when you think you're ready to hear the results.
Yeah, let's go for it. I mean, even if we can just share some quick percentages, Joe, in terms of what you're seeing.
Yeah, all right, really quick. Let's see. So it looks like majority right now, QA engineers, 64% of 14 people that took the poll so far. 29% consider themselves SDATs and 6% consider themselves business analysts. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on those results? Is that what you expected? Is that normally what you see?
Yeah, it's actually it's very consistent with what we've seen, and it's actually kind of a great audience for us to chat with. And
Yeah.
and I'm actually I want to be sensitive about this here because I don't want to sound like I'm preaching to the choir. But a lot of what we've seen as teams have embraced test automation and started to adjust to the new pace of delivery. Is that there've been, it hasn't been a smooth road, right? There have been challenges that have emerged along that way, and so firstly, the methods of creating test automation itself could, in some cases, become bottlenecks. And then it became a challenge to retain the resources that could actually build automated tests. And then there was this fragmentation. And really, I mean, this is kind of where we're going to be, kind of focusing our attention today in this webinar. There was this fragmentation that occurred because there were so many different tools being used. And Chaim, I wonder if you can elaborate a little bit more on sort of what we've seen here.
Sure. So with test automation sitting at the heart of agile, and with the the mismatch in skill set that Joe alluded to at the start of this webinar, projects have been forced to create their own automation frameworks. So what that meant was to have yet another code base to maintain. It's a code base that doesn't necessarily translate to bottom line. It is a deviation, and a major deviation for the team, because they get deviated to build something else that is not quite what they are tasked to do, being the testing and creating the main application that the project is have been put together to create. It's more pressure because yet another software to maintain, and it's not a one-time thing. When you start creating the framework, you have to create it and then maintain it throughout the life cycle of your software, because constantly there are changes to the software, requirements coming down from the testing team. Browsers get upgraded and updated and everything. So it's an ongoing challenge that you have to maintain that framework throughout your program. Now, finding resources who are well versed with coding and also know the testing pretty well to be able to break the application and exercise the boundaries of the application is yet another challenge that the teams have to struggle with. But given that these resources are scarce, meaning resources that know both coding and testing, um, it inflates the costs of the project. It makes the project extremely expensive. So these challenges have led to the emergence of codeless automation tools. Now, codeless automation tools have been great because it has created the opportunity for larger community of people to be able to contribute to automated testing of the application that they are building. That meant that essentially means anyone within the any of the stakeholders, being business users, subject matter experts, developers, testers, they can all participate in automated testing. But it has also posed a challenge to the industry, and that has been the fragmentation in the automated testing world, meaning that uh, even though anyone and everyone can do this, the problem is that there are tools that are geared towards specific automated testing needs of the project, meaning there is one for web testing, there is another one for native mobile testing, another one for API, database, on and on. It never ends. And then on top of that, there are a series of tools that are created for non-functional testing, being security, accessibility, and performance testing. All of these tools have led to um, various silos that have been created, and not a whole lot of reuse can be obtained from these tools that are not interoperable with each other. Now, this means that smaller teams, if there are churn in the project and somebody leaves, there is a whole lot of institutional knowledge that leaves the program, and then bringing folks and ramping them up to take the spot of someone that has recently left becomes extremely challenging, and realignment and all of those things will become an extremely challenging process. This has been the primary driver for unified tools that can essentially bring everybody under the same umbrella for their end-to-end testing needs, in addition to all of their non-functional needs, which essentially is the main topic of our conversation today.
Yeah, thanks, Payam, and thanks for describing the challenges that emerged there. And as Payam was saying, like, to counter these organizational challenges that started to come up, companies and testers have started to demand solutions that could serve a much broader remit. And you guys have seen this, right? So it started with combining more forms of functional testing. So we started to see tools that could do maybe some web and mobile and desktop testing. And then in the past few years, I would even say it's gotten a little bit weird, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. So we've seen a lot of larger firms starting to acquire some of the smaller and more specialized solutions that are out there in the market. And why I say gets a little bit weird is because in most cases, it didn't really solve any of the collaboration or silo problems that Pine just described. I say that because what we see in the industry is that when one of these big players acquires a smaller player, they never really integrate that tool into some common fabric or use models. In fact, I mean, you can buy the tools all from one vendor, but each of the tools themselves has its own sort of disparate GUI. And it's, some in our industry sort of call this a bit of a Frankenstein approach to tooling, right? You take the head from one body, the arm from another, you sort of stitch it together, kind of looks human, but isn't quite, right? And so I guess the challenge that has brought is that from the perspective of management, there is some expectation that collaboration should be possible and that, we can reuse and we can share and we can do functional and non-functional testing. But in practice, because those tools were never really woven together in any meaningful way and still exist as a standalone entity, it really kind of exacerbated the problem. And so with that said, I'm gonna pause for just a quick second, and Joe, maybe just turn it over to you for a quick second to maybe launch our second poll. So we're very curious to hear what sort of testing our audience is undertaking today. And Joe, if you wouldn't mind just kicking that off.
Absolutely. So I kicked off the poll, and once again, to answer the poll or see the poll, all you need to do is click on that Q&A tab to the right of chat. You'll see the poll right there ready for you. I'm curious to know what your experience is as well, because I have definite things that I've been seeing, and I would love to get your input. So if you're here, fill out that poll. Let us know. Right now, it's 100% everything. So everyone just get in there. I'd like to get a nice sample for everyone. And I have some groovy music to go with this too. So fill out that poll, get your groove on. We'd appreciate it. All right, people are voting. Good to see. Thank you, everyone. So, Joe, there's a slight lag between what we see and what they see. So that's why there's a slight delay between when people start entering the poll, just so you know.
No problems.
All right, 7 folks have answered the poll. 8 people. Thank you, everyone. 10. All right, you're all awesome. Keep it coming. Joe will let us know when to stop the music and hear the results.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and see what we've got, Joe. Thank you.
All right, yeah, let's see. All right, so 100% say API, which is good. I'm surprised by that. 93% say web. We have 80% for end-to-end, 53% for database, and 53% for load performance. Let me see what else is on. Let me scroll down. Desktop is 33%, accessibility 33%, security 27%, native mobile 20%, other 7%. So Joe, is that what you expected? It seems all over the board. So people need a solution to handle it all, in my opinion.
That is what we were hoping we would see, actually.
Yeah.
And so no surprises there. I was a little bit surprised that API testing was at the top of the list. I mean, maybe a little bit surprised by that, but yeah, really interesting stuff. Pime, over to you. Do you maybe want to talk a little bit about sort of how this tooling is starting to evolve to serve all of these disparate types of testing that obviously our attendees today are dealing with?
Sure. So, because of all of the challenges that we talked about, there have been new market entrants to offer tooling that could support a wider range of testing capabilities on both functional and non-functional fronts to essentially allow all project stakeholders to participate in the automated testing as well as non-functional needs of the project. Now, this is basically a massive upskilling for the tester community. It's giving them a lot of capabilities, a lot of empowerment to be able to do all sort of testing that they need to do without having dependencies on the development team or other subject matter experts who are specifically skilled to do security testing or accessibility testing. This is essentially also a new paradigm that allows a shift left for not only functional testing, but also non-functional testing. It used to be that towards the end of the sprint, towards the end of the release, somebody would start doing load testing. highly skilled person who knows how to be able to, handle or interpret HTTP traffic and all to be able to do load testing. A highly skilled individual or individuals who can do, find the security vulnerabilities and then do accessibility testing. With a unified platform and doing a shift left on all of these non-functional testing needs, early on, anybody in the life cycle, whether it's developers, testers, and everybody else, can basically do all of these testing, non-functional testings early on to be able to find most of the mundane set of security, accessibility, and load testing issues of the software early on, so that when we get towards the end of the sprint or the release, those highly skilled individuals can do more exploratory testing, can do more sophisticated type of load testing, vulnerability testing, and all of those things. So that essentially means less and less of these non-functional issues will hit production, given that all the stakeholders are involved doing that. It is a unified platform. It's one single interface. Anyone can do it. If we have attrition within the project, within the team members, replacing them will be extremely easy. Getting holistic reporting across the board is easy because, again, it's one consolidated tool for everything. And just imagine a scenario that you are building an e-commerce web application. So essentially what you are doing during your functional testing is you will hit the URL of your e-commerce application, you log into the platform, you will find the set of products that you would like to add to your shopping cart. You will do the checkout, provide your credit card information, do the checkout. And as part of the same test, you are testing your database to make sure that all of the interactions that you've done with the web application is properly reflected in the database. You are doing all sort of API interactions with your accounting system, with your inventory system, to make sure that as these checkout process is taking effect, the proper inventory mechanisms are taking place to reduce the inventory that you have, is adding to your accounting system the amount of credit card transactions that are taking place and everything. And then on top of that, once you know that your end-to-end platform, end-to-end testing and functionality is working fine, then you can reuse those automated tests and add 100 virtual users, 500 virtual users, adding more and more pressure on the application under test to be able to find the bottlenecks with leveraging their automated tests, and then you can reuse them for security testing and accessibility testing. So essentially making more and more reuse out of what you have created, now that you can get throughout all of the pages, all of the flows within the application. This would be the best way to get maximum reuse out of your testing assets throughout your life cycle.
Thanks, Payam. It's great to hear what some of the benefits of unified testing is and are. Let me just talk next about how Subject7 is leaning into this trend. And so I'm going to describe a little bit here about what we're working on, what we've created. You guys are going to see this in another few seconds when I hand over to Payam to show you guys a quick demo of what we mean by unified test automation. But I guess what we've started with is devising a common platform that supports virtually every type of testing that an organization would want to do, right? And so that's everything that we've talked about, whether it's web apps, mobile apps, desktop apps, functional, non-functional testing. And since we live in the cloud, Subject7 lives in the cloud, we were born in the cloud, our solution really scales easily to meet massive testing needs. And so what we've built into our application and our software and our offering is the ability to orchestrate all of the infrastructure that is needed to test at an enterprise scale. In fact, most of our customers are running thousands, and in some cases, tens of thousands of daily tests using our software. And so I'll just kind of give you a quick sense for kind of what we're doing and sort of, what some of the unique attributes of Subject7 are. So we've talked a lot about codeless testing today. And you guys, our audience is undoubtedly hearing about codeless testing. Everybody has codeless testing, is doing codeless testing, but there's nuances to codeless testing, right? Some of the tools out there are codeless when you're authoring a test case, but maybe start to become less codeless when you have to maintain or do much more sophisticated types of testing. What we've done in Subject7 is we've made everything possible to be codeless. So whether that comes to authoring, UI tests, doing API or database testing, and granted, those are slightly more technical types of tests that you would create, but we've created templates that make it easier to sort of create your test cases, using Subject7. And as Payam already mentioned, we're covering both functional as well as non-functional testing, and we're allowing a test case that may have been created for a functional purpose to be reused in a lot of different ways. The second big thing we did is that we made it really easy to collaborate. And so in the example that Payam just mentioned about that ecom app, right? So my first few steps, and let's say I've got a testing team of 10 people, the first steps of navigating to that ecom site, entering in some user credentials and logging in, it doesn't make sense that every single tester would have to start with those first few steps with every single test that they make. What we did in Subject7 is that we made it really easy to reuse parts of tests that someone else had already created. And so the advantage there is that it really reduces our maintenance burden, right? Because if everybody is using these common steps, when our application changes, we add MFA, we do whatever else, we can change it once, and all those test cases are going to inherit all of those updates. The third thing we did is that we really built a complete ecosystem around Subject7. So Subject7 in and of itself is kind of an ecosystem already. So we have the ability to author tests. You would use your computer for that, and you can run it. You could build tests if you're using a PC, a Mac, even a Unix box, actually. And so you can author your tests in Subject7. But then when you want to scale your tests, when you've perfected them and you want to run, dozens or hundreds or thousands of permutations of your test cases based on data-driven testing, all those test cases are automatically orchestrated and run in our cloud. And we've built plugins to CI/CD and ticketing and other sort of adjacent DevOps and Agile tooling to provide a really integrated experience. And one of the ways that we've kind of integrated that experience is in our reporting, right? So in some ways you'd say reporting is reporting, right? I mean, we can see what's passing, what's failing, and everything else. But we go a little bit of a step further. I mean, there's really nice fidelity in terms of what you can see in our reports. But secondly, we've tried to make our reports as actionable as possible. And so, for example, if we see a test case has failed and we can associate that failure to a defect that we want to report to somebody, wouldn't it be great if I could just click to open up a Jira ticket and associate all of the metadata of that test, the screen recording, the video, the screenshots, the log data, and automatically create a ticket that somebody can actually look into. So we're trying to make sure that where the rubber hits the road and where we find defects, that we're making even that process more easy, more controlled, and more traceable. And so I'll just mention really quickly, some of the customers that we're sort of working with and stuff here. We have a unique story at Subject7. I mean, we got started in what is arguably the toughest market segment in the world, which is the U.S. federal government. So we presently serve 8 U.S. federal agencies. You can see a few of those logos up here on this slide, ranging from the National Institutes of Health to the Federal Aviation Administration and even the US DoD. And so what's unique about that is that we had to solve two major problems right out of the gates. One, and certainly when you're working with the government, you have to operate within extremely stringent security parameters. I mean, and some of the networks, and you can only imagine, the level of security that would go into some of these government networks. So we had to solve that problem. Secondly, we had to solve the problem of scaling. So these programs with these government agencies are massive. They may have 50, 60, 70 testers that are all collaborating and working to ensure the quality of a single application or a range of applications that agency may be offering. And so we had to solve the scalability problem as well. And that really made our pivot to the enterprise market very easy because, with those two challenges solved, we could embrace the needs of an e-com company or a major financial services firm or a major healthcare provider, and so our customers sort of grew in that way. And then the last thing that happened from a customer perspective is that a lot of the big consulting companies out there took notice and started to build practice areas around Subject7 and our test automation. Some of them launched centers of excellence where they could perform, where they could use Subject7 test automation and actually provide services or manage services to their clients. So with all that said, and I know we talked kind of quickly there, but I want to get to the good part, which is the demo in just a second here. Joe, I'm gonna just prompt you, if you don't mind, just to kick off our third and our final poll here real quick. Just as Payam and I transition, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Payam's going to start sharing his. And Joe, over to you for the poll.
Awesome. So while they're transitioning and getting ready for the awesome demo, make sure to answer the poll. Thank you, everyone that's participated so far. It's been a great crowd so far. So keep it up. Let's get that poll going, and we'll have it shown in a second. So I've seen one person do it so far. Like I said, there's a slight delay between what I'm saying and what you're hearing. So hopefully that's what is the delay. But thank you. Someone just voted. Thank you. All you need to do to answer the poll is go to that Q&A tab. And in the Q&A tab, the poll will be right there for you, ready to take. And I assume once the demo is ready to go, Joe will give me a thumbs up and I'll just transfer it back over to him. But as we wait for those poll results, right? All right, thank you, everyone. 10 people filling out the poll. Awesome, awesome, right? Round of applause for everyone participating today. Thank you, thank you. Keep it up. Right, Joe, if you're ready, give me a thumbs up and I can go back to you if you're ready. But I can't hear you because I'm in a different view. So I'm just going to go right to you. So here we do.
Yep.
All right, Joe. So you ready?
Yeah, perfect. Payam is sharing the screen. And Joe, if you don't mind, just maybe sharing the poll results that we've got real quick, and then Payam can kick off the demo.
Let's do it. Poll results using open source tooling. That's what I could, not surprised here. 64%. Vendor tooling 29, manual 7. It's a good group of automators here. That's awesome.
Cool. Very cool. Awesome. So I'm gonna hand over to Payam to show you guys the demo, and for all those users out there using open source, we love open source. We have baked a lot of open source into Subject7. It's part of our secret sauce. But Payam, why don't you show us and tell us a little bit more here?
Thank you, Joe. So Subject7, as we talked about, is a cloud-based test automation platform for both of your automation, functional and non-functional needs. From the perspective of our end users, essentially they log in to a web-based application. So I've logged in as a user to this web-based application. Now we have various ways of authoring the test. So we do have a robust recorder, which is using an AI-enabled engine to allow you to record the scenario that you're trying to create in a very robust way, so that from sprint to sprint, as the application under test changes, the recordings don't break. If the application under test changes in a manner that your workflow essentially changes, we'll give you the ability with our guided web user interface as well as our recorder to go in and modify an existing set of automated tests by inserting a few steps to accommodate the screen changes or the flow changes to bring your scripts back live without having the need to either going back to your developers to modify third-party generated code, which is the result of the initial recordings that you've done, or have your testers re-record what they have recorded before. It is just, it gives you everything you need to be able to modify an existing set of tests to bring them back live. Now, let's look at the test. So this is our full-blown authoring and debugging engine. What we are doing here is that we are going to navigate to an e-commerce application. We are going to log into that application, go to the products page, add specific item to shopping cart. Then we will go through the process of checkout by providing our credit card transaction and information. Then once the checkout is complete, we are making database queries to the backend of this e-commerce site to get the product ID, and then go to the customer's table and get the customer information to make sure that the order that we've placed is properly registered in the backend with the user that, or the customer that has done that checkout process. We'll look at the status table to make sure that the status of that order is properly reflected in the database. And then we'll do some REST services to make sure that the external systems that this e-commerce application is dependent on have properly reflected the changes that this order has caused against the back end of this system and everything. And then we will log out. So let me run through this test. What this test is essentially going to do is that our local player is going to be launching my default browser. You will see a flashing rectangle around the widget as it's interfacing with the application. So we just logged in. It just went to the product page, add a specific product to the shopping cart. It did the checkout process. It is providing the credit card information to allow me to check out of it. And then there will be a little pause to that before it logs out. And at that point, all it's doing is it is essentially going through the database checks that I mentioned, doing the REST calls, getting the proper reports back and everything, and then it logs out of the system. So it is an interactive player in the sense that anytime there are failures within the test, you can at that point add steps before and after the failure, and then it will allow you, either using our AI enabled recorder or our guided web user interface, to fix the failing the failure of the test, and then resume from where you left off. The application, the platform dynamically recompiles your changes, and it will allow you to resume from where you left off. So using this player and the recorder and our guided web user interface, you create, fine-tune, and debug the flow that you're trying to create or fix. Once you fix and create the test, it will allow you to do all sort of refactoring on it. Nothing in here is hard-coded. We have parameterized everything for data-driven testing so that you can feed the proper set of users, roles, environments, being dev, test, staging, and UAT, be passed to this test, and a single test to run it against all sort of permutations of data, browsers, versions, and operating systems. It will allow you to bundle the reusable set of steps. As you can see, logging into the e-commerce application is bundled under a function. Adding series of items to shopping cart, they are bundled under a function. Credit card processing, on and on, they are all bundled. So you do your proper refactoring of the tests. Once you're happy with the flow and everything is refactored, ready to go, the next step is for you to create what we call execution set, which is really our unit of Cloud Run. At this point, you will specify which set of operating systems you want to go to, whether it's Windows 7, Mac, Linux, on and on. You will specify the series of browsers that you would like to go against. You will have all sort of capabilities to define all sort of callbacks if you would like to bring your database back to its original state when you're done. If you want to do any sort of cleanups, if you want to update your dashboard, your requirements management tool, your defect tracking system, you will be able to do it all from the callbacks area. It has a scheduler built in, so you can schedule this to kick off at specific dates or times with whatever frequency that is needed. It has notifications built in, so you can say that upon failure of the test, send an email to this distribution list of folks. When that specific event occurs, being the failure, it will send an email to those guys with a link to the video, a link to the screenshot, a link to the report of the execution. And then you will select all the data, all the test cases that you would like to include as part of your cloud execution. It will do the cloud execution for you. When it does it, it will provide you reports very similar to what you saw with local player. It tells you exactly what went wrong and where, and then you can do the proper troubleshooting that you will need, and you can expand any one of these that will tell you where the bottlenecks are and everything. Here is a sample video that gets recorded for you. This is the, the executors on the cloud. It's showing you exactly what's happening. In the interest of time, I'm going to fast forward it so developers can essentially take a look at this to be able to mimic the specific issue that they may have spotted in production, in staging, in UAT, and whatnot, to be able to reproduce it in their own environments. Now, creation of the test without writing the code is already there. Now the question is, now how can I reuse it for my non-functional testing needs? So let's start with accessibility testing. All I need to do is to use the same exact tests, but with additional commands that we plug into the test, we can get more reports, more data as we transition across pages. As you can see, my functional report is already there for me. If I'm only interested in the functional report, I can look at it. No impacts to my functional report. But additionally, if I'm interested in looking at my 508 or accessibility, I get an additional set of reports available for me here that tells me that there is a form label missing. I'm violating the provision 332 level A. It gets a screenshot of the violating element. As you can see, that green rectangle around, enter your email here, that tells me which element is violating that provision. It tells me the description of it, what I can do to fix it, and the specific HTML tag that corresponds to that violating element. Another one, image missing because of lack of an alt text. So again, it's highlighted in green, so I know what the issue is and which provision it's violating. So it's very easy to essentially reuse my automated test for 508 testing. I can also do something similar to that and get the load testing in. So all I need to do for my load testing is to basically just specify how many virtual users I want to simulate, provide what my ramp up time is going to be, all of my parameters around my load test. Then I can go ahead and reuse the automated test, the end-to-end functional test that I created earlier. I can bring it into my load test, and then it is going to be, giving me the information that I need for my load test. It basically gives me the information as to, at the action level, how many virtual users went to that initial site of the e-commerce site, how many of them were able to log in, all of the statistics related to those 100 users as they were concurrently interacting with my application under test. Now, here it's giving me a few different points. First of all, there is no complexity here. There are no HTTP traffic being shown to me as a non-technical or non-load testing expert. I can easily create my load test. I can get the report of my load test. I can interpret to see where my bottlenecks are. So as these averages, minimum, maximum, standard deviations are going up and down, I can filter on those bottlenecks and find if I have specific SLAs that each page has to be operating within 10 seconds, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever my SLAs are, I can easily find those vulnerability points. If things start to drop out, so as you can see, step 10, going from step 10 to 11, I have about 40 or so threads or virtual users dropping out. So I can easily see where the bottlenecks are, where the application under test is taking the heat and is not able to handle the load. It will tell you the specific reason for the failure, and then you will essentially easily see where the impacts are if you want to take actions and send it back to your development team for changes and everything. And then lastly, you can bring in the set of commands that we have for security testing, for active or passive. And it will essentially same test, same flow, same everything. I just say that, run it as part of your functional test, but concurrently take a look and give me all the vulnerabilities, and it will give you, the specific passive or active vulnerabilities that are have been identified. Tells you, whether the issue that has been found, they are severe, minor, moderate, cosmetic. It will tell you what CWID it's violating, what provisions within the OWASP it is violating, a description of what that is, as suggested recovery action, so that what you can do to get around it, and then specific reference if you're not familiar with that specific provision. It will give you some guideline as to what that is and what it means. With that, I'll pass it back to Joe for Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you, Payam. Let me just, I'll share my screen again real quick, just as we get the Q&A started over here. And very good. So, Joe, I wonder if you might be able to share with us some questions that are popping up in the Q&A.
Absolutely. Got a lot of great questions. So, Joe, it might be easier if you if we could see both of you side by side, if you stop sharing your screen, or we can keep the slide up. It just might be, but we have a bunch of questions coming in. So I'll get to the first one while we noodle with this. First question is, I think you've answered this, but this question came in fairly early. I want to make sure to get answered from Jamie. So Jamie, thank you for all your questions. Do you offer advice or access to the device simulators like BrowserStack offers? Is it an all-in-one offering?
Yes, it is an all-in-one offering. We do have all sort of iOS or Android emulators or simulators available. One other major benefit you get with Subject7 is that you no longer have to interface with external system. Everything comes out of the box for you as a service, so that you can only concentrate on testing your application as opposed to constantly doing the integration with external systems.
Awesome. Great. All right. Sorry, I was messing around with my the screen here, so I'll just keep this up for now. But for now, another question is, one second. Someone else wants to know, does this run in headless? So do you have an option to run tests headlessly?
Absolutely. Headless is one of the options in addition to all of the other dominant browsers, but headless is definitely one of the options.
Nice. So next one, we've got a lot of these, like how's it compared to this and that. I try to keep names out because I don't want to say one's better than the other. So, but I just want to get your opinion on, I've seen a lot of codeless tools before. Many of them can't perform a sophisticated tests. How would you say Subject7 compares to these other tools?
So I think Joe, as he was going through his set of slides, sort of alluded to this, that a lot of vendors claim that they are headless. They are headless to the extent of creation of a basic flow, but then when it gets to either maintenance of that flow or creating more sophisticated tests as to, okay, compare this with that. I want to, issue a database call. I want to do, take a look at the results of a JSON file and, extract information from my JSON, compare it with my database and everything. They sort of fall short in the sense that at that point you have to resort to coding. With us, we have abstracted out all of the coding of them. We have put them behind our guided web user interface. You just select that I want to go against this database. I want to go against this endpoint. I want to do this sort of comparison. It will give you all of the parameters that are needed to be able to do that specific complicated and sophisticated check without the need to resort to any sort of coding whatsoever. That said, if there are needs to do coding, so in other words, if you have sophisticated users who want to do extremely complicated things that we do not have a command for, we are not going to be crippling them either. They can certainly write plugins for the tool to extend the capabilities of the tools if and when needed.
Awesome. All right, next question. A lot of coming in. Thanks again, Jamie, for this question. Does your tooling does your tooling for the UI use any AI to address locator issues? I thought you mentioned something about AI, but I wasn't sure.
Absolutely. So we are using AIs in various means. We are using AI to create the test. So our recorder is AI enabled to be able to create a robust set of elements or locators for you to begin with. But then post that, as the application under test goes under maintenance and enhancements and everything, we do have self-healing capabilities that kicks in to try to recover the locators that may no longer working as a result of changes to the application under test.
Great, great. Okay, next question is, how is this test repeatable across several test environments? How is the test data set up and destruction handled?
So across different environments, there are essentially two main points. One of them is what you well mentioned is setting up the data. The second thing is providing the proper data sets to be able to point you to different environments and have the users that are specific to those environments. So we do have a data driven way of modifying your test so that there are no hard-coded data inside of your test. You can just write one test it against one specific environment, parameterize it, and then feed the data that will point you to various environments. And then we do have various ways for you to do suite setup and suite tear down of your environment so that before running your test in a specific environment, you can run the proper suite setup to stage the data, to create the environment and everything. And then once you get past the series of automated tests in an environment, before you run it next time, but will give you facilities through callbacks and suite teardown and everything to stage the data and your environment back to its original state so that when you run it next time, if there are data dependencies that prior run sort of messed it up for you in that environment, it will allow you to set it back to its original state so that you're starting clean for your next series of automated tests.
So we get a lot of questions coming in. There's a lot, so I don't think we're gonna be able to get to all of them. But I'll try to do some lightning round here. So next question is: are security validations performance metrics added to each test step, and are they flags turned off for the capture?
You can turn them on and off as needed. So in other words, they can be added as need be to not necessarily slow down your regular automated testing.
Great. In the chat, someone mentioned something about Google Lighthouse. Is Google Lighthouse integrated in here somehow, where you can get those metrics when you run your tests as well?
It is not integrated into Google Lighthouse as we speak, but we do have a lot of APIs exposed that integration into essentially anything external is literally as easy as inclusion of a series of REST services.
Someone else asked, what is the provision for writing custom code in exceptional situations? A lot of times when people hear a code list, they're like, I can't see the code. I don't like a black box. Do you handle that type of scenario?
Absolutely. Well, the platform is open. You can certainly write plugins to the tool if you would like to extend the capabilities. Also, if you have a team or if you have a series of, let's say, Selenium code already written, there is no conversion per se. You don't have to abandon all of your ROI. What you can do is you can point your execution engine within your Selenium code, leave them in your GitHub, in your source code repository, just point them to Subject7 execution engine. First day, they will get executed against one set of execution engine. The reporting will be available within the Subject7 portal. Then your other team members can write Subject7 automated tests. They can both happily exist together without one necessarily conflicting with one another.
Great. So just really quick things, does it support, don't know if you know off the top of your head, does it handle embedded Angular objects?
Absolutely.
Sweet. Someone else asked, does it provide any integration with automated visual regression testing tools?
Um, so no, not at the moment, but we do have um, desktop automation capabilities built into the platform that those desktop capabilities can be used to do visual testing if needed.
Great. And I guess time for one last question. I think this is right in your wheelhouse, and it is. I work in a secure organization. I used to work for an insurance company and healthcare company, and this was always an issue. It's difficult for us to use any kind of tooling. You mentioned Subject7 has enterprise grade security. What does that mean?
So we are a SOC 2 Type 2 compliant, and we did that for all of our financial institutions. That said, it's extremely flexible so that if for our government clients, we have installed the entire solution in a Dockerized manner behind their firewalls. You can actually take bits and pieces of Subject7, have some of it be on our public cloud, some be on your private cloud, extremely configurable. We have done many of these installations for Department of Defense, for other banks and everything. So it's modularized so that we can take bits and pieces and morph it into the specific security requirements of your project without any specific hurdles being thrown from your security team.
Great. Okay.
Hey, Joe,
Next.
I know we're up on time, and
Yeah.
I've got one more slide. If it's okay, can I just pop that up real
Yes,
quick?
sir. It's all you.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much. Very good. So look, we've talked about a lot of stuff today, and I want to thank everybody for making time out of your day to join us for this webinar. Hopefully, it was interesting, captivated maybe a little bit of imagination and interest and stuff like that. We'd love to hear from you guys. So to all the folks that have joined this webinar, we would love to get you set up to try out Subject7. If there's some pieces here that you've heard about that might be good solutions, for some of the test automation challenges that you're facing, please reach out, hit our website, go ahead and sign up, and I'll just describe what you can expect in that process. So once you sign up, one of our team members will reach out to you just to get a little bit of a sense for the type of testing you want to do. We cover a lot of stuff, guys. I mean, like a ton of stuff. And so we want to make sure that as you get started, we're equipping you with the right resources so that you can get off to a hard start using our software. And so from there, you'll get your account provisioned. And then what we like to do is have one of our solution specialists check in with you about a week or so later, just to kind of make sure you're meeting all of your automation goals. What I hope you will learn about Subject7 in this process is that we're not one of these vendors that just kind of throws software over the fence and you've got to figure out whether you're going to sink or swim with it, right? We are highly invested in making sure that our customers are successful using it. So, we expect to hear from us. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. And really, we hope you'll check us out and sort of see if we can assist. I really hope that you've enjoyed our presentation today, and we look forward to the opportunity to support you guys. I want to say thanks to everybody who attended and for sharing your time. Joe, I want to personally thank you for featuring us in this session and for all the great questions that everybody's asked. I'll on behalf of Pime and I'll wish everybody a great rest of your day. You guys probably have seen this already. We geek out just a little bit on test automation. We always like to close our meetings by saying happy automating. And so I will wish everyone here happy automating. And Joe, back over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe. Thanks so much, Pam. See you next time on The Guild. Cheers.